Welcome to our noon edition of Arirang News. Here are the headlines at this hour. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong hinted at improving relations with Japan. She even implied that Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida could visit the reclusive regime, as he recently said he felt a strong need to change the dynamic of their relations, hampered by the North's nuclear weapons development and its kidnapping of Japanese citizens in the 70s and 80s. Here in South Korea, the economy has bounced back thanks to a rebound in exports and manufacturing production. The finance ministry on Friday noted how the country has seen consecutive economic growth for the last 3 quarters and would now focus on lowering living costs as requested by the public through the president's latest policy discussions. Doctors at the top 5 hospitals here in South Korea are ready to resign in protest of the government's latest decision to expand the number of med school student admissions from next year. All residents will hand in their resignations by Monday and will stop working after 6 a.m. on February 20th. Starting with a potential breakthrough of a diplomatic stalemate between North Korea and Japan. The reclusive leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong suggested that a visit by Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to Pyongyang could be on the horizon. This is a very rare opportunity, given that North Korea-Japan relations have been icy over Pyongyang's constant nuclear threats and unresolved abduction issue. Some experts believe Pyongyang is offering a hand of diplomacy to counter South Korea's recent forging of diplomatic ties with the North's long friend, Cuba. Kim Yo-jong has our top story.
Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korea's leader, expressed optimistic intentions regarding improving ties with Japan a day after South Korea forged diplomatic ties with Cuba. According to the regime state-run Korean Central News Agency on Thursday, Kim said that Pyongyang and Tokyo can open a new future together if Japan makes a political decision to improve relations. The remarks came after Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida last week said that he feels a strong need to change the current relations between the two sides and that related activities are currently taking place. Kishida last May had also expressed a desire to meet with Kim Jong-un. Kim Yo-jong added that Kishida's visit to North Korea might happen on the condition that Japan is willing to leave the past abduction of Japanese citizens off the table. Relations between Pyongyang and Tokyo have long been sour, as Japan claims that 17 of its citizens were abducted by North Korea in the 1970s and 80s, and that 12 still remain in the north. North Korea argues that the issue has already been settled, saying that 8 have died and the remaining 4 were never kidnapped. Experts say the remarks could be intended to counter South Korea's recent establishment of diplomatic ties with Cuba, a longtime ally of North Korea. Seeking cooperation with Japan could provide North Korea with a breakthrough, as its diplomatic isolation in the international community is becoming increasingly severe.
I believe the North intends to counter the establishment of diplomatic relations between South Korea and Cuba with a cooperative relationship with Japan, while strengthening the hostile relationship with South Korea.
Kim Yo-jong, however, stressed that her remarks were solely her personal opinion. She added that the regime's leadership still has no plans to repair relations with Japan and that it remains to be seen what Kishida's intentions are in the future. Kim Yo-jong, Arirang News.
South Korea's economic momentum is gaining traction thanks to a rebound in exports and manufacturing production. But the pace of recovery varies across sectors, with a sluggish pace in private consumption and investment. Our economic correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
South Korea's economy is continuing its recovery momentum with strong manufacturing production and exports. That's according to the Economic Green Book released by the Finance Ministry on Friday. The ministry's description of the country's economy has changed to recovery momentum is continuing from the previous reports. Signs of recovery are expanding. This is mainly due to a rebound in exports and manufacturing production.
Exports continue to rise, and in mining and manufacturing production, there have been consecutive increases for the last 3 quarters. With these factors, the economic recovery momentum has strengthened further.
In December, production in mining and manufacturing went up by over 6% from the year before, driven by chip sector, which saw a jump of over 50% in output on rising demand. The country's exports continued to increase for the 4th consecutive month in January. There was an on-year increase of 18% in exports last month as demand for semiconductors continued to improve and shipments to China grew for the first time in 20 months. However, the ministry pointed out that the pace of recovery differs across sectors, with signs of sluggish private consumption and stagnant construction investment becoming more evident. In December, retail sales, a key gauge of private spending, dropped 0.8% from the previous month. Construction investment fell 2.7% on month and over 1% on year. There are rising expectations for a recovery in the IT industry and soft landing for the global economy. However, it evaluated that uncertainties still remain due to geopolitical risks like the war in Ukraine and the outbreak of conflict in the Middle East. In response, the government plans to continue to manage potential risks while also focusing on improving people's livelihoods by implementing key policy tasks identified during livelihood policy discussion with citizens. 신하영, Arirang News.
On the back of a recovering economy, South Korea also saw more people in work this January compared to last year. The manufacturing industry specifically showed a stronger performance, and this isn't stopping the finance ministry from looking for more ways to provide more jobs. Our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin with the story.
South Korea's on-year job growth has recovered to the 300,000 range for the first time in 3 months. Data released by Statistics Korea on Friday shows that there were 27.7 million people in employment last month, up 380,000 from the previous year. This also marks the largest on-year job growth recorded in 10 months since March last year. Job growth was primarily led by an increase in employment of those aged 60 and above, which recorded a 350,000 rise, while there were also increases for those in their 30s and 50s. On the other hand, employment figures for people aged 15 to 29 fell by 85,000 compared to the previous year, showing a decline for 15 consecutive months. While an on-year drop for 40 to 49-year-olds was recorded for the 19th month straight. In terms of different job sectors, the healthcare and social assistance sectors saw the largest number of job additions, with more than 100,000 people hired, followed by the science and technology and construction industries. And the manufacturing sector also recorded an increase for the second consecutive month with an addition of 20,000 new hires last month. Employment in manufacturing tumbled from January to November last year before recovering in December.
The growth in the manufacturing sector was partly due to the base effect, but the auto and medical sectors are also seeing a rise, and while the electronics and chemical sectors remain sluggish, they are also showing signs of recovery.
And during a job task force meeting held on the same day, the first vice finance minister announced that while January's employment figures are encouraging, the government will remain vigilant.
We will continue to respond and monitor risk factors amid concerns about geopolitical tensions and sluggish construction orders. We will also promote hiring programs to create 1.14 million jobs in the first half of the year.
The vice minister also pledged that the finance ministry will continue to focus on implementing measures that will lead to an export-oriented recovery and expand women's participation in the workforce. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
There's still a major economic hurdle for South Korea to jump over this year. That's the country's equity market, or stocks, that's been devalued by what's called the Korea discount. This is when the value of a public company is lower than that of other major countries. And officials will propose a new reform to tackle this ongoing issue later this month. Moon Hae-ryun tells us more.
제 임기 중에 글로벌 스탠다드에 맞지 않는 자본시장의 규제는 과감하게 혁파해서 글로벌 증시 수준으로 코리아 디스카운트를 해소할 것입니다.
President Yoon Suk-yeol pledged to reform the country's stock market, starting with a short-selling ban last year and following up with a new program that's to come. Korea discount refers to a phenomenon in which the value of companies listed on the Korean stock market is lower than that of other major countries. And it's a very real issue. According to the Korea Exchange, the PB ratio of the country's benchmark Kospi is one of the lowest out of the 38 OECD member countries. PB stands for price-to-book ratio, and it shows the market valuation of a company compared to its book value. If the PB ratio is lower than 1, it means that the company's current stock value is lower than the money left from selling its assets. A general outline of the corporate value-up program was released last month, and it aims to increase the value of stocks with low PB ratios. While the finer details will be announced sometime later this month, it is already affecting the market. The Kospi Composite Index surged from the 2,400 mark to over 2,620 over the past few weeks, and foreign investments began piling in. In February so far, offshore investors bought nearly $4.5 billion worth of local stocks, which is the fifth largest monthly sum to date, despite only being halfway through the month. Experts are hopeful about what the program could continue to do for the market once it goes into effect.
We can look forward to an increase in capital efficiency and greater ROE for firms with low PB ratios, leading to a rise in PB ratios for these firms.
But some are wary that this could die down just as quickly and that they will need to be followed up with policies over a period of time.
They have to be followed by further reforms and further commitment by Korean companies and the Korean government that stockholders' value will be respected. Because the Korean discount has lasted for decades, any short-term programs are not going to be able to eliminate Korean discount.
There are also concerns that as the current program looks as though it will be more of an advisory than an enforcement, requiring firms to set target goals, it could fall flat. Further details will be needed to see how the government plans to address these concerns. 문혜련, Arirang News.
As anticipated, doctors from Korea's top 5 hospitals have decided to resign next week in protest of the government's expansion of medical school admissions for the year 2025. Shin Se-byung brings us the details.
In response to the government's decision to increase the medical school admission quota by 2,000 to over 5,000 by 2025, residents at 5 major hospitals in Seoul announced they will take collective action. According to the Korean Inter-Resident Association on Friday, as a result of discussions with residents at the so-called Big Five hospitals, all residents at those hospitals will submit their resignation by the 19th and will stop working after 6 a.m. on the 20th. The Big Five hospitals refer to Seoul National University Hospital, Seoul Asan Medical Center, Catholic University of Korea Seoul St. Mary's Hospital, Severance Hospital, and Samsung Medical Center. The decision to hand in their resignation comes as Kira and Big Five representatives urgently discussed measures to respond to the government plans from 11 p.m. Thursday to 2 a.m. Friday. Some of the participating hospitals have already confirmed that all of their residents already agreed to hand in resignation letters. If collective action goes ahead as planned, it would mark the 4th time doctors have taken such action since the first medical strike in 2000. As of last year, it was reported that there were about 2,700 residents working at the Big Five hospitals. Meanwhile, medical students nationwide have decided to submit leave of absence requests en masse for next Tuesday, the 20th. This decision followed an emergency meeting held on Thursday evening by representatives from 35 of the nation's 40 medical schools. During the meeting, all 35 participants unanimously agreed to coordinate the submission of leave of absence request while ensuring unified action across all 40 medical schools. Another meeting to further discuss plans for upcoming actions, including the possibility of boycotting classes, is scheduled for later on Friday. However, according to the Education Ministry, as of Thursday afternoon, no leave of absence request had been submitted to the universities. In light of collective action by doctors and students, the government is planning to move forward with a solid response strategy. Currently, the Health Ministry prohibits collective action by doctors and has warned of the possibility of licenses being revoked if they do not follow a ministry's immediate return to work order in the event of a strike. Shin Se-byung, Arirang News.
President Yoon has introduced a stipend program to provide full-time grad students in national research programs for engineering and science with at least $600 for master's students and $820 for those studying for PhDs. His decision came as the president hosted the 12th Livelihood Policy discussion with scientists in Daejeon, known as South Korea's research and development city. Yoon is aiming to tackle claims that the lowered government budget for R&D for the year 2024 means less support for the science sector. He also laid out the government's plans to develop the region through infrastructure such as the Chungcheong Train Express to connect nearby major cities, while speeding up the development of a second science park in Taedok, which follows the Taedok Innopolis. Israeli forces have again raided a hospital in Gaza, which they say was part of a search for the remains of hostages taken by Hamas. Meanwhile, a wall is being built in the desert of Egypt, close to the border of the war-torn Gaza Strip. But the Egyptian government hasn't made any official comments about this. Yoon reports with the latest.
On Thursday, Israeli forces raided the biggest functioning hospital in southern Gaza, claiming they were seeking the remains of hostages taken by Hamas. The Israeli military said it had credible intelligence of Hamas holding hostages at the Nasser hospital. According to Chief Military Spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, forces conducted a precise and limited operation there without forcibly evacuating medics or patients. Israel has accused Hamas of using hospitals and other civilian structures to shield its fighters. The raid on Nasser Hospital came hours after an Israeli attack killed a patient and wounded 6 others inside the complex. The Gaza Health Ministry said that as troops searched hospital buildings, they ordered more than 460 staff, patients, and their relatives to move into an older building in the compound that isn't equipped to treat patients, adding that fuel for generators would soon run out, which would endanger the lives of those in intensive care. Meanwhile, a wall is being built in Egypt, close to its border with the war-torn Gaza Strip. Footage and satellite imagery obtained by news outlets show that a plot of land has been cleared off and a wall is being built in the buffer zone between Egypt and Rafah, apparently over concerns that refugees from Gaza will spill over across the border. Rafah is now overflowing with over 1 million displaced Palestinians struggling to survive in tents and makeshift shelters with scarce access to food and other critically needed supplies. The New York Times has reported that their analysis of the satellite images indicated that the work began around February 5th. According to an interview with a contractor and an engineer, the Egyptian army commissioned the building of a 5-meter-high concrete wall to close off a 5-square-kilometer plot of land at the site. But the Egyptian government has declined to discuss the new construction. Yoon, Arirang News.
This year's World Team Table Tennis Championships will kick off in the southeastern port city of Busan on Friday, marking the first time South Korea has hosted the event. The tournament will run until February 25th at the Busan Exhibition and Convention Center. More than 2,000 athletes from 47 countries will be competing, with the top 8 men's and women's teams set to qualify for the Olympics in Paris this summer. In even-numbered years, the World Championships feature men's and women's team events. Individual events, on the other hand, take place in odd-numbered years. South Korea was supposed to host these championships in 2020, but that was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Korea Football Association National Team Committee has suggested that Klinsmann, the head coach of the men's national team, be fired. Now it's up to the chairman Chung Mong-gyu to make the final decision. Our E&E explains why the KFA came this far.
The Korea Football Association National Team Committee on Thursday agreed to suggest the firing of Klinsmann, the head coach of the men's national team. However, the final call can only be made by the Korea Football Association's president, Chung Mong-gyu. The committee announced its decision at a press briefing at the KFA headquarters in Seoul, citing concerns about Klinsmann's leadership skills and tactics.
For various reasons, there was a conclusion that Coach Klinsmann can no longer serve as the leader of the national team and needs to be replaced.
Director Hwang Bo-gan, a former player and coach himself, added that some saw Klinsmann's lack of commitment as he was mostly working in the U.S., where he lives, and not spending much time in South Korea, as disrespectful towards the Korean public. Klinsmann attended via video link as he had already returned to his home in the U.S. and reportedly said during the session that he was unaware that a committee meeting was due to take place. After South Korea lost 2-0 to Jordan in the semi-final of the Asian Cup in Qatar this month, this content began to grow among the fans due to Klinsmann's perceived lack of tactical acumen. In addition, the recent admission of a fallout between some of the players in the build-up to the Jordan match has further raised concerns regarding the coach's man management abilities, particularly as it appeared to impact the team's performance. amid growing voice for KFA's president to take responsibility for hiring Klinsmann and resign from the head of the association. The chairman has been selected as a candidate for the AFC Executive Committee election, which takes place in May 2024. Yoon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In Russia, a Ukrainian missile attack on the southern Russian city of Belgorod on Thursday has left at least 7 dead, including a 1-year-old girl. Russia's health ministry confirmed the 7 deaths and said 18 others, including 4 children, were hospitalized, with 6 in serious condition. According to regional authorities, Ukraine's attack left severe damage to a shopping center, a sports complex, and nearby apartment blocks. While Kiev made no immediate comments, Russia's foreign ministry called the attack a monstrous crime against civilians. Located some 40 kilometers from the border, Belgorod is the nearest major Russian city to Ukraine. Last December, Ukrainian drone and missile attacks on Belgorod killed 25 civilians and prompted hundreds of residents to evacuate. In the United States, Kansas City police have said the deadly shooting at Wednesday's Super Bowl celebration started from a dispute between several people on the day of the parade. The shooting left 1 dead and more than 20 injured. While no suspects have yet been charged, Kansas City police has 2 juveniles in custody and identified that the shooting stemmed from a personal dispute. A 3rd person, who had been detained, was released on Thursday as they were cleared of any involvement in the shooting. Kansas City Police Chief Stacey Graves said there was no link to terrorism. The parade for Kansas City Chiefs' Super Bowl victory amassed around 1 million fans and parade goers. According to the Gun Violence Archive, the shooting at the parade was at least the 48th mass shooting in the United States this year. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's bid to dismiss an indictment case related to hush money paid to a porn star has failed, as a New York judge on Thursday denied the request. Following the ruling by Justice Juan Merchan, Trump is set to become the first former U.S. president to stand trial on criminal charges, with March 25th set as the trial date. Trump had been seeking the dismissal of the 34-count indictment over the falsification of business records to cover up a payment of $130,000 to porn star Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. In Brazil's Rio de Janeiro, the annual festival of color and energy, Carnival, is coming to an end. The 2024 Rio Carnival Festival, which began on the 9th of February, will see its final day of celebrations on Saturday, February the 17th. And after competition between Rio's elite samba schools at the world-famous Sambadrome, it was the Viraduro Samba School that took victory. This means that the Viraduro School will have the honor of reprising their performance at the Champions Parade on Saturday. Kim Yo-jong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It absolutely felt nothing like spring was on its way, with snow and wind yesterday in the capital area. After sub-zero temperatures this morning, we'll notice highs going much warmer in the central regions, but those in southern provinces are having a much chillier afternoon today. We can look forward to April-like temperatures this weekend, though, before another brief cool snap moves in next week. So enjoy the weather, if you can, this weekend. Now let's take a closer look at today's afternoon highs. Seoul sees a high of 8 degrees, but again, southern regions see highs going down about 5 to 8 degrees compared to yesterday. Gwangju and Jeju will be topping out at 11 degrees Celsius this afternoon, with brighter skies and decent air quality nationwide. Saturday looks to be a sunny one. That nationwide rain is in the forecast on Sunday. Up and down temperatures continue next week with frequent precipitation in the forecast, so please take good care. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you at this hour. We'll bring you more stories from Korea and around the world the same time next week.